joining us now, she's a friend of the show.
Yeah, NBA Draft Insider.
And a friend of ours, Krysten Peek, with us here on Jake and Ben. What's going on, Krysten?
Hey, guys. How are you? Big morning.
Yeah, long time no talk, so we're very happy to have you on the show. And you and I have been talking about getting you on to talk about Yegor Demeen. But obviously today the big news is AJ Dybantsa, the biggest recruit ever to play high school basketball in the state of Utah, and certainly ever to commit to a local school, does commit to BYU. Can you give us some backstory on kind of how long this has been in the ether and how this came to be?
I mean, I would say BYU started hitting everybody's radar probably this summer when AJ Dybantsa decided to commit to Utah Prep. And then prior to getting on campus in Hurricane, Utah, he took an unofficial visit to BYU, met with head coach Kevin Young, and by all accounts, it went very, very well. So BYU was definitely in the mix this summer. And then in the fall, we saw him go off against the Boozers in San Diego and then also in Las Vegas at the Border League. BYU rolled 4 coaches deep to the Border League, which is unprecedented. So you knew that they were in the mix. And then I now live in Las Vegas. I used to live in Murray, and people are like, oh, you left too soon. Don't worry, everyone. The guest room at my brother's house is still available. I will be in Provo. I will be in Provo a lot next year. But they, the 2 games that they had out here, Utah Prep did on the grind session. The very first game, it was Alabama head coach Nate Oates and an assistant coach and 3 players rolled up to their game. And then the very next night, it was a BYU assistant coach. So that's when people started piecing together that it was kind of like a race between Alabama and BYU. So I'm not surprised that BYU is the final landing spot. I know Kevin Young has done an absolute fantastic job in turning around the program, making it more a pro-style program. I mean, it's night and day in comparison when I went to a BYU practice a year ago to when I went this fall and saw how things were being run. And that's very appealing to a player that is probably going to be the number 1 pick in the 2026 draft and wants a pro-style offense with a lot of offensive touches in the pick and roll.
It's still, I can't help it. It still feels so salacious to ask this question. And not that I'm asking you this for this specific instance, but if, an overall idea, how much money are we talking about, do you think, here, Krysten? I mean, you talk to people in this world.
Yeah, I don't think it's a 7 mil, 9 mil, whatever anybody's reporting. And I honestly think that when you look at the NIL package as a whole, they're factoring and they're combining also the money he's getting from Nike and from Red Bull and all his other deals. So When you look at those numbers are substantial. I think it's more close to the 3 to 4 mil NIL package and not the 7 to 9.
Pretty nice.
Yeah, not too bad.
Pretty nice.
Kevin Young makes $4.5 million.
It's still ridiculous. It's still ridiculous money. Yes.
Okay, so
man, I would live anywhere for. You ever think about that?
For 30 games?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
For that kind of. I mean, Provo is lovely. Don't get me wrong, but of all the negative recruiting out there, I would literally live anywhere for that kind of dough for that period of time. That's crazy. Good for him. That's awesome.
Krysten, you mentioned it already. You kind of teased it. He's the likely number 1 pick. He's the projected number 1 pick. Is this a Victor Wembanyama situation where there was basically nothing minus catastrophic injury that could knock him off of that number 1 spot? Is it 60-40 with Cam Boozer or some of the other names? What do you think the likelihood is? And I know we are, 18 months out from this draft. What's the likelihood he is the number 1 pick?
This is what I want to say. So everybody's looking at the 2025 draft. Yes, Cooper Flagg is great. Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper, even Yegor, they're all great. The 2026 draft has the chance to be very, very special. And no, this is not a Victor Wembanyama draft where it's generational type talent. Everyone is going to be tanking. But the 3 players projected at the top have the chance to be cornerstone players in any NBA franchise and multiple-time All-Stars. And That's AJ Dybantsa, Darren Peterson, who's committed to Kansas, and Cameron Boozer, who's going to Duke with his twin brother, Caden Boozer. And when I look at the three players, I mean, they just had really big games 2 nights ago. I was on the call for the NBA TV and NBA app for the Cameron Boozer game when it went to triple overtime, and Cam just took over the fourth quarter. They were down. He took over every shot that he needed to make in all 3 overtimes. He was incredible. And then 4 hours later, we saw AJ Dybantsa and Darren Peterson go head-to-head when Utah Prep and Prolific Prep square off. And AJ finished, Prolific got the win, but AJ finished with 28 points, 10 rebounds, 8 assists. Darren, 32 points, 10 rebounds, 6 assists. So when we're looking at these 3 players, they are very, very, very special. And if you are a team, maybe the Jazz, who are looking for another rebuild piece, next year's draft is going to be very special.
I know these hypotheticals are difficult, but would AJ Dybantsa be the number 1 pick in this year's draft if he was eligible this year over Cooper Flag?
Yes. Yes. No hesitation, yes.
Wow, that's crazy. Krysten, what was your? I guess, have you come across Kevin Young much covering the draft, and what was kind of your take on him before he took the BYU job?
I know his brother Justin very, very well. Justin, who's now the head recruiting director, I guess, at BYU. He has been in the grassroots space for a very, very long time. So I'm very close with Justin. I just met Kevin this summer at Peach Jam when he was actually watching AJ play. But my impressions on him is he is here. This is what happened with BYU. Kevin came in and he said, it's no longer good enough for us just to make the NCAA tournament. We want to be a powerhouse, not only in the state of Utah, but also in all of college basketball. We're going to turn things around, and that starts on the recruiting front. And so what he did, getting Yegor in this year, and then next year with AJ now, and then also we haven't even talked about Xavier Staten, who is, a top 25 player in the senior class. So he is making all the right moves. He has the right staff around him. Like I said, I went to practice. It's very much run like an NBA practice. They're running an NBA offense. And for players that are looking to make the NBA and make that next step, this is a great destination for them.
So what have you seen from Yegor so far? He jumped out of the gates and looked like he's going to be in, contention for the number 2 overall pick maybe. Fell off a little bit. We've seen Dylan Harper really take over the college basketball world. So what have you seen from Yegor early?
Yegor is one of those players that's funny. I made the rounds before I moved out of Salt Lake to Las Vegas, and I made the rounds. I went to Utah, I went to Weber State, and then I went to BYU, and I was like, I need to come back, and I went back. And then I went back again. Do you know what I mean? And it was always just getting more looks, more familiar with Yegor's game and what he possesses. I mean, at 6'8", point guard, passing genius. I mean, that's what any NBA franchise wants in a true point guard. You want size, you want great playmaking, great vision, and he just plays the right way. And what I really loved about seeing him at practice is he was just all about, making sure that he was getting the ball to the right places for his teammates. After practice, he was talking to coaches. Okay, what about this drill? Who do I need to be looking for? This play. Like, he is so plugged in. And it's so cliche to say, oh, a point guard about the right things and just wants to get the ball in the right spot. But he is that. And he also was coming over to other players like Cannon Catchings and being like, okay, do you want the ball in this pocket or this pocket? Where do you want it off this screen? And so he was so plugged in. And that's something that I rarely see, honestly, from players of his caliber.
Krysten Peek is with us here on Jake and Ben. Krysten, can he shoot? And let me ask a deeper question. If the answer is I don't know, what is the likelihood these days that guys turn into prolific shooters if they're not so at this particular age?
I think anytime you see a player that's one and done, even two and done, like we saw this with Ryan Dunn at Virginia. Hello, this kid shot 18% from three in 2 seasons, and then he's all of a sudden become a three-point shooter with the Phoenix Suns. So I think there's a lot of forgiveness and just patience with players like Yegor and his shooting capacity and how he can, or capability, and how he can shoot off the dribble and catch and shoot situations. And people don't know this, or they can't remember this. I know this because I've been covering the draft forever. But LaMelo Ball only shot 22% from three on 5 attempts when he was with the Adelaide 36ers in his 1 year in the NBL. He still was a top 3 pick. He was still fine in the NBA. So when you look at players and you wonder, oh my gosh, can they shoot? They're struggling. They're in a shooting slump. That necessarily isn't a problem when you're drafting a player because you can get your player development and you can get your coaching involved and make them more comfortable. There is so much pressure. I just want to say this. There is so much pressure when a player is one and done in their 1 year of college. Like, it's such a mental hurdle and it's such a mental game that once they finally find out where they're going to be having their NBA career and their next step of their career, they kind of relax and they get into the groove and they're not so stressed about, oh my gosh, my shooting percentage isn't great. Oh, I went 1 for 10 in this game or whatever. So I think he'll be fine.
We have seen a shift recently in college basketball, and ironically, the Oakland team that remind me beat Kentucky is kind of the butterfly effect that led to AJ Dybantsa landing at BYU, right? Jack Golke beats Kentucky with this old Oakland team. What I'm trying to get to is, are young teams able to win in college basketball? I know that's not necessarily your beat, but we see guys like Dalton Knecht and we see guys like Zach Edey winning in college, and we don't necessarily see these one-and-done guys winning at the highest level. Do you think that will change, and is AJ Dybantsa good enough to win at the highest level?
I think that's a fair question, and I think Duke, there's a lot of pressure on Duke to win this year, especially they came in with the number 1 recruiting class, maybe the number 1 pick in the draft with Cooper Flagg, and you've seen it, like down the stretch, Kneppel and also Cooper turned the ball over when they had a chance to win a game against it was Kansas and Kentucky. And so, like, are they good enough? Yes, but when you come down to the NCAA tournament, experience, I think, trumps youth and talent. And so I think it does definitely change the landscape. And where the transfer portal comes in, kind of great, is teams that have younger teams. Like I definitely think BYU is going to go to the transfer portal this year and try to get a experienced point guard to come and play alongside AJ and Xavier next year. So the portal helps, but yes, I think experience and how old you are and how many times that you've been to the tournament trumps youth and the one and done sort of criteria.
Okay, I'd be remiss to have you on and not talk about the Utah Jazz a little bit in the upcoming draft. They are currently projected to have the 3rd overall pick. They are tied with the Pelicans for the 2nd fewest wins in the NBA at just 5. I think it's going to be hard for anybody to catch the Washington Wizards for the worst team in the NBA, but understanding you've got about a 14% chance to end up in that top 4 picks. You've already talked about Yegor. Who are the guys that you think are projected in that top 4, and can you give us just kind of a brief bio and breakdown of who they are as players?
I mean, obviously, Cooper Flagg, 6'9", forward out of Maine, very young still. We saw what he did against Team USA in the scrimmage. Loves the mid-range, back to the basket, 1 dribble pull-up move. He still has a budding 3-point jump shot. Then you got Dylan Harper, who is turning into, he's giving Cooper a run for his money. Just a great point guard, great facilitator. He really worked on his body. His 3-point shot is coming along, and he is just a winner. Like, that dude knows how to win and makes the right play down the stretch. I love Dylan Harper. Ace Bailey is probably sitting there at number 3. Ace, 6'10", shot maker, mid-range master, never saw a shot that he didn't love, has really started to come alive off his injury that he suffered early this season. He had a hip injury was really good. His last game here in the Players Era tournament that I saw here in Las Vegas, and he's coming along, but really, really great upside for all three of those players.
All right, Krysten, before we let you go, let's talk about you a little bit for a second. Yahoo is dead to us all, which is nice. They had that coming. You've been the only reason to go there for a while. You're doing NBA stuff. You're working with the NBA. You're down in Vegas now. What's update us?
I am. So my former employer, they were really nice. They let me go the very first day of the NBA season. So I was in a U-Haul with Gary, my dog on my lap, and my dad driving when I got the news. That was really nice. But no, I'm working as a color analyst for NBA and NBA TV for all the high school games. I called 7 games in Miami. I'm calling 6 more games during the NBA Cup here in Vegas this weekend, high school games. And then I'm on Locked On podcast with Rafael Barlow for their big board twice a week. That just started literally today. We had our first podcast where we talked about AJ and his commitment to BYU. So, yeah, we got a lot of things going on. Appreciate you asking.
Yeah, well, we're going to continue to bother you. I hope you're all right with that.
Listen, I have all the time in the world now. I don't have any written assignments. I don't have any deadlines or mock drafts to write. I am free.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate it. We love having you on. So thanks for being willing to do it. Congratulations on the new gig. Seriously, that's awesome. And we'll have you back on soon.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks.
Thanks, Krysten.